been a good weekend. It's good to have everybody here this morning. Before we start, we're going to go to God in prayer. Father, we just come before you. We recognize that you are the God of creation, that you created us, and you created us that we need life-sustaining food and water and air, and you provide those things. And Father, we do need spiritual food and water, and you provide those things. We know that Jesus says that he is the way, the truth, and the life, and we believe that. He says he is the living water. He says he is the bread of life. And as we read the events that happened in his life and how he interacted with people, help us to learn from that and gain some knowledge and to mold our life around how he lived. And we just ask all these things through him. Amen. So if you're going to go out to eat, where would you prefer to go eat at? You're going to pick a place. Culver's. Yeah, you guys really like Culver's, don't you? You go there quite a bit. They probably know you by name now, don't they? And they probably got their order on speed dial. Oh, there's Keith and Levon. He always orders this and she orders that. Yeah, they got a Levon button on the register, right by the Butterburger. Why do you like Culver's, Levon? Okay. Who else? Where would you go out to eat? Peppers. Okay. Why do you like Peppers? Choice of food?
Food is good.
Food is good.
Price. Good service. I mean, we usually get seated right after church. We go there usually on Sunday.
So you got those menus down too, right? Yep. You probably know what's on the menu before you even sit down. Yeah. Do you always order the same thing, or you try to change it up a little bit?
Change it up.
Okay.
But otherwise, I could go to Peppers and they have those 2 for $20 meals.
Uh-huh.
So that's usually what we order, and we get each an entree and a side dish. So that's cheap lunch.
Agreed.
Good food.
Yeah, I try to change it up a little bit. Earlier in my life, it was always the same thing. I find something I like, and I'd order it the same every time I went somewhere. Then as I got a little older, I realized that, I had to try some other things here and there just to change it up a little bit. So. Yeah, that's my granddaughter. We go out to a real fancy barbecue place in Kansas City. My granddaughter, chicken tenders, everywhere. Go to Fritz's Hamburgers.
Yeah, I got a granddaughter the same way. No matter where you go,
That's right.
It can be the fanciest restaurant on the earth, and she's ordering chicken tenders or whatever.
Well, my other granddaughter ordered a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at the barbecue place. So. They were happy.
You should have told her to pack it.
I heard somebody over here say A&W, or that was you? Okay. Well, why A&W?
I like their root beer with that.
Yeah.
I guess I always felt it was a better quality than you're going to get out of fast food. I think that's a big part of it. I've gotten food where I could get fast food for a while, but
Yeah.
where's there? Not here anymore.
Well, there used to be one over in Cedar Falls. Yeah.
No, there's one in Cedar Falls.
Is it still there?
Yeah.
Over there by Blaine's?
Yeah, over right after you get off the freeway.
Yeah.
Janet likes to get the corn dog, the chicken chili dogs. In Cedar Falls, if you get off the freeway, the last exit out of the freeway.
Morning, Gilbert. Yeah, everything seems like fast food. Peppers isn't too much fast food. But, guys, for me anyway, sometimes you go quantity first, right? How much am I gonna get with this? This is guys, I'm a guy talking. How much am I gonna get? Price is second, and that usually ends up third for me. Sometimes I eat something I don't really want because in that one you get like a side of fries and a drink, and you go, well, I'll go with that because of all the other things you get when you really want something over here. Really? Because it tastes better. But I've changed that up too. I mean, I've learned to maybe order something. A lot of times I order something different that I haven't had. If I'm at a place and they've got, I tried shark down in Des Moines. There was a restaurant that had shark. Tried that.
What was it?
It was pretty good. You know, it didn't have a lot of flavor. The texture was like gristle. You know on the breast meat of a chicken, there's that little gristle at the tip. That's kind of what it felt like eating. You know, and octopus is the same way. There's no flavor to octopus, and it, you know, yeah. You gotta season it with something, right?
Have you ever had alligator tail?
I have had alligator tail. The same thing, and they had it fried, and it just didn't have a lot of flavor to it. Who? A lobster grilled cheese. No, I've never had that.
We were looking for, when we were on vacation in Florida, I wanted lobster so bad, because that's one of my favorite things. So we set out to find some lobster, okay?
Yeah.
Couldn't find any until we went to this, where was it? I can't remember, some sort of, they had a lot of activity, a lot of places to eat. And I said, oh my goodness, there's lobster grilled cheese. So we marched all in there and everybody got a lobster grilled cheese. They were expensive for a lobster grilled cheese.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it though, even though?
It was really,
Okay.
yeah.
There's a place up in Clear Lake, how it used to be, there's not there anymore. But the guy that lived behind it made root beer and sold it to this place. And homemade root beer was so delicious. And I usually stop at this for root beer.
Yeah. Drive out of your way for it, I'll bet. Yeah.
Well, when I drive truck, I park in the driveway.
Lisa, were you the one that's telling me about going to Maine? And I can't remember who was telling me.
Wasn't me, because I've never been to Maine.
Okay. It wasn't you. And you don't have a sister, so it probably wasn't you, because it was her sister. Oh, okay, so if I'm telling the story to somebody in this crowd, help me out here, because they went to Maine with her sister and her mom, and they drove all over the place looking for this lobster. And they finally found a place that sold lobster, and they went in, and mom ordered lobster, and she ordered lobster, and her sister ordered like a ham sandwich or something. She goes, why did we drive all over the place looking for lobster if you're going to order a ham sandwich? So. Lobster's gross, is that what you said?
Lobster is like the garbage eater of the sea. It's
Tastes really good when it's boiled, right?
Yeah, and you gotta have some butter on it, right? Yeah.
just tell Bailey about how the lobster's like maybe 2 genetic markers away from the cockroach. It is, it's like very closely related to the cockroach. And it eats like 2.
Yeah.
Well, there goes supper.
Huh? Yeah. Well, class is over. We're gonna go eat. Yeah. Well, we're gonna be talking about Jesus feeding the 5,000 and Jesus feeding the 4,000. Both of those stories, because they're similar, and I figure we'll just teach them both at the same time. They're found in Matthew and Mark, also in John. The feeding of the 5,000 is found in John, but not the feeding of the 4,000. So, and we're going to be drawing from each of these stories in the different accounts because each of them have some facts about it that add to the story. So we'll be drawn from all 3 of those references. But we'll be in Matthew. Oh, here's the map of where Jesus went. He went from Gennesaret over to the right here where it says feeding of the 5,000. This is a desolate area. There's mountainous there. And the feeding of the 4,000 is a little bit farther down south. And just so you kind of get an idea as we tell the story of this is the Sea of Galilee and this is where it happened. So let's start in Matthew 14, verse 13. And we'll get to if I have to go back to the map, we'll do that. Now when Jesus heard about John, he withdrew from there in a boat to a secluded place by himself. And when the people heard of this, they followed him on foot from the cities. Now, prior to this in Matthew 14, and we talked about this earlier in our studies of Matthew, John was beheaded. And so Jesus had just heard that, and he wants to be secluded. He wants to withdraw. He lost somebody close. I don't know how he was feeling, his reaction to that, but he lost somebody close, somebody who was a spiritual prophet from God. Have you ever wanted to be secluded? Where do you go if you want to be secluded? My bedroom. When we had kids, we were at home. If you wanted to get away from all the noise and everything, go to your bedroom, right? And try to get away from it. Or an office or the creek. That'd be a good place to go. Go fishing. Where do you go? If you need to think, if you need to meditate, to get away from it all. You know, we live in a society that everything is fast now. I mean, we don't have any downtime, do we? Because I've got this baby now with me. You know, we were waiting prom yesterday, sitting there waiting for these couples to come out in their dresses, and the 15 minutes before, everybody had this out, playing games, looking at text messages, whatever. And so to get secluded, just to be down, have some downtime, where do you go? What do you do? Camping? Okay. Yeah. Sit around a fire?
Yeah, I tent, which eliminates most people from I still eat the hot dogs and s'mores when I camp, so that eliminates most of the rest. So, yeah, for me, probably
Okay.
So work and they start pulling saws and stuff out of shit. Around.
That's your playground? Okay. Well, Jesus was trying to be secluded. I don't know if he wanted to meditate, if he wanted to pray to God, if he wanted to reflect on what was going on in his life. And so he came over to here, and the people from all these cities over here to the left went around the lake and found him. Okay. Verse 14, when he went ashore, he saw a large crowd and felt compassion for them and healed their sick. I've been teaching a long time, and I always teach about when Jesus heals somebody, it's to confirm the word that he's teaching. But I don't see that here. It says he had compassion on them. He saw a need that they had and he fulfilled it. Yes, it did confirm the word that he was preaching because nobody else was doing what he was doing. But I see the compassion here more than doing it to prove who he was. I've challenged people in the past that as you read through, anytime you're reading the Bible and it says Jesus had compassion or felt compassion, There's always an action behind it. If you can find an instance where it said Jesus felt compassion and there's no action, let me know, because I haven't found one yet. And if you can find one, I want to know about it. And the teaching is that compassion isn't just an emotion. Compassion compels you to have action. Verse 15. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This place is desolate, and the hour is already late. So send the crowds away, that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said to them, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." And in the version of John, John 6, I think it's Andrew. Might be Philip. Let me go to John 6 real quick so I don't get it wrong. Philip answered him and said, 200 denarii isn't enough to buy food for these people. So Jesus is expecting the disciples to feed them. Philip says, 200 denarii. We wouldn't even be able to buy enough food for all these people. A denarius was a day's wage. So you're talking like 200 days worth of wages where the average person would not buy enough food for them. And there was a lot of people. It said a large crowd, 5,000 men, and above that, women and children. So there's more than 5,000 people. The McLeod Center holds 6,500 people. Do you know where the McLeod Center is on the UNI campus? Okay, and the Unidome holds about 16,000 people. So you kind of get an idea of how large a crowd this would actually be. And it would be difficult to feed them all, right? And they're in a desolate place. Over here. I don't see any. No, there's no Culver signs. And no Peppers.
No McDonald's.
No McDonald's. That's right. There's no Walmarts. We talked about where we like to go. We have a variety of choices. We can eat hamburgers, fast food, Chinese, Mexican, pancakes, breakfast anytime, all day at Village Inn. We have such a wide choice. Where are they going to get this food? There's not even villages around here to buy it from. There's no markets. How are you going to feed all these people? By the way, if you have a comment or a question, just feel free. Otherwise, I'll start preaching.
Well, I'm gonna back up a little bit from where you're at.
Okay.
Jesus went up on the mountain to pray. He went up there by himself.
Yeah.
He came back and he finds his followers. So he goes back up and prays again. Goes back and finds him. Goes up the third time. And that's, to me, I'm thinking he wants to be alone when he prays. Because it says for us to go into a closet and pray, where we by ourselves. I think Jesus had that same idea when he was praying up on the mountain, that he was by himself. And it's an example that we should follow, to be by ourselves when we pray. We need we need things in our lives that if we permanently pay for in his time, he'll answer. You follow what I'm saying?
I do. I'm going to address the solitude a little bit. When Jesus was praying, it was in the Garden of Gethsemane. And even though he went by himself, withdrew from himself, and in my mind, this is my opinion, so bear with that and consider that this is my opinion. You can focus better when you don't have distractions around, right? I focus better when I don't have, it talks about what we started out the class with. You find somewhere where there's no distractions. And I think that's what Jesus was doing. But he asked the disciples to pray with him. And I can't remember if he specifically said, pray so you don't fall into temptation, or what he told them to pray about, but he wanted them to be praying also, along with him. He wasn't very happy that they fell asleep. And the second part of that, going to your closet and pray. Part of that storyline is because he doesn't want us to be out on the street corner saying, look at me. I do a really good job praying, so come listen to me pray.
Like the Pharisees.
Yeah, like the Pharisees. It's more about, it is not about you, it's about you and God. And so that's the part with the closet thing. Does that answer your question, or okay? Verse 16 of Matthew 14, but Jesus said to them, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. And Philip responds with, how are we going to, how? You know. And they said to him, we have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish. In John, it talks about that they're barley loaves, and it indicates that that would be a poor man's type of bread. That's just a note. I don't know if it adds to the story or not. And he said, bring them here to me. Ordering the people to sit down on the grass, he took the 5 loaves, 2 fish. Looking up towards heaven, he blessed the food. Breaking the loaves, he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. They picked up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 full baskets. There were about 5,000 men who ate, besides women and children. We see Jesus blessing the food. Is that a big deal? You know, I grew up in a household that we always prayed before a meal. Whether I was at grandma and grandpa's, it didn't matter where I was at, we prayed for it. And it feels odd that when we don't pray. Sandy and I have been getting into the habit of praying out in public too when we go out to eat now. And I have mixed emotions about that. I don't want people, I don't want to be praying in front of people to make it look like I'm doing something holy, but yet again, I want to do that because, but here's an example of Jesus doing it, and he's out in public. There's 10,000 people seeing him. And so, is it important to see that Jesus is praying for this food?
I think the intention behind this is important. Jesus didn't pray in front of these people because he's like, oh, maybe someone of them will see me praying and they'll want to talk to me about it, which is a lot of times the argument people use for why you should pray in a restaurant. It's more about, I'm not going to allow these people to dictate what my relationship with God looks like.
Right. Agreed. Yeah. The disciples served the crowd. Think of that. There's the 12. Well, and there's other disciples too, but the 12, the apostles. Jesus could have had them set aside and said, some of you 5,000 men get up here and serve us, feed us. Why do you think he had the disciples? He broke the bread, handed it to the disciples, and the disciples fed the crowd. Why do you think he did that? Serving? I came to serve, not to be served, Jesus says. Yes, Dan.
I just wonder part of it too is later on when he's not there. These are the men that are going to carry it on, so it could be an introduction to the crowd that
Okay.
If you recognize it.
I guess when I brought this up, I never really felt like there was an ulterior thing or lesson going on. It was people need to eat. And when I need something done, who do I entrust that to? I'm going to entrust that to the people closest, to the people I know are going to feel as seriously about this as I do. So I guess to me, I never really felt like he was trying to teach something here. It was, these people need to eat. Of course, I'm going to ask these guys.
And it seems to be a simple task, right? I'm going to dig a little further into this because do you remember James and John where they said, who gets to sit on the right, who gets to sit on the left? We're starting to think about their place in this kingdom that Jesus has. And Jesus doesn't want them to get any higher and mightier than they need to be. And if you're the person doing the serving, I think of Keith and Levon. I'm sorry, I don't want to embarrass you, but you serve. You guys are servers.
All the time.
Yeah. To the point where when we have Elder Sunday, I don't even worry about the coffee because I just assume that you're going to be up here making coffee. And a lot of times we take that for granted, right? We show up and the coffee's right there and pour myself a cup. Well, it didn't just show up, right?
Amen.
And I truly believe that Jesus is telling his disciples to be humble, to make sure that they don't get too big for their britches, as my dad would say. Too big for your britches. What does that mean anyway?
Biting off more than you can chew.
That means you're providing for yourself and not for somebody else.
Capable of more than you are.
You're glorifying yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Think you're better than somebody else. Too big for your britches. Yeah. There's a lot of sayings like that from my grandpa and my dad that's like, I look back and now, what did they really mean? I knew what they meant at the time, like dry up, You say that to a kid, say, dry up. Huh? What do you mean dry up? Straighten up. What do you mean straighten up? Anyway, sorry. I got off topic here. Behave yourself. Say he had the disciples serving the crowd. It's all you can eat. It says that they ate till they were satisfied. They ate their fill. John 6:12 says, and when they had eaten their fill, he said to his disciples, gather up the leftover pieces so that nothing will be lost or wasted. You can use wasted there also. How long? Well, yeah. How long did it take to make it? Usually when I'm hungry, it doesn't take very long for me to eat. But you're talking about 5 to... Yeah. Yeah. That would be, yeah.
That's why there was a McDonald's.
We've all been at that point where you're hungry and you see a McDonald's and you pull in there and there's a bus. Yeah, there's a bus there, a school bus, and you're going, oh, brother lips. And I just keep driving now because I know what the scenario is going to look like. We did that one time at a McDonald's. We stopped and the school bus was there, but we were going to go ahead and order. And the McDonald's had let all their help go home, so there's only one person taking an order, one person cooking. It was a nightmare. I don't know if we ever did get an order in there. I can't remember, but I know that it was frustrating for the 2 workers that were there. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting us off subject. I apologize.
Well, that was me. The disciples, the apostles, had to be overwhelmed. It's like when I worked at McDonald's way back in the day, they had the lobby. You didn't have a
Right.
And then the lobby, I yell, I'd take an order, and I'd yell, "We're lobbied," that means we were full, you know, we were pretty good sized lobby. And that was when I take an order, so that they sent me out in the crowd with a pad.
Is that back when you wrote down the order in ink?
Yeah.
Well, that is, you're talking way back.
1912,
Yeah.
a couple years after they opened, you know. That's back when McDonald's tried to pretend like they were an actual restaurant. Yeah.
That was when you could get a hamburger and a fries for less than 50 cents. All right, we're,
I'm sure they were overwhelmed, it's like.
oh, absolutely. Yeah,
But we see that with just their response to Jesus. There is no, you don't see any hesitation. They're immediately just stunned that he would dare to ask them to do something like this.
yeah. Well, in our human thinking, we would be too. We would be counting the heads. And we've done that at potluck. We're counting the heads and going, whew, you know, Jesus, we need you to divide some of this food up, you know. The 12 baskets that he picked up. Why? If he can make bread out of stones, as the devil told him when he was tempting him, if he could break bread and fish and feed this many people, why in the world would you need leftovers?
I think that there's a lot of times, God keeps saying that scriptures are written for us, but not to us. I think there are times when Jesus does and says things that we don't really get the full application of until we're in a completely different culture. I don't know that it would have meant a ton to them by how much was left over. Because everyone ate, that alone is miraculous. But then later on, Jesus tells his disciples, "Hey, so that they may have life, and that they may have life abundantly." And abundantly is important. Abundantly implies that there is so much available that you can have your fill and never be concerned about running out. And so after he said that, suddenly stories like this take on even more meaning. He didn't just provide enough. He provided more than anyone could eat. And we look at our lives today, how many times have we struggled to figure out how to make a resource last need? We're short on money. How am I supposed to pay all of these bills when the money I have available to pay them 50%? How am I supposed to feed my family if I have 2 cups of rice and some water? How am I, there are times where we experience in life that our resources are just not enough for what we need. And we have stories like this now available to us where we can see if God has provided that. And it's not just enough. It's more than we need. And so now I get to shift my thinking from what I lack to try, I need to figure out what is the opportunity that God has right now. Because I can't say I don't have enough. Because if I do, I contradict. So that must mean there's an opportunity here that I have to live. So we have stories like this where lessons come out of that probably weren't really applicable to the people at the time.
We can look at the teaching in Matthew 6 where he says, don't worry about what you're going to eat, don't worry about what you're going to wear. That correlates with what he's doing here. We think of the story of the Israelites coming out of Egypt, and God provided them manna in the desert. They needed sustenance, and he provided. And the difference with that story is he told them to pick up just enough that you needed for that day. Don't gather more than you can use. Don't try to get so much that you got some for tomorrow. Just worry about today's, because if there were some people that tried that, and the bread was no good the next day. It had worms or something in it that caused it to be no good. So it's interesting to me that Jesus told them to pick up the 12 baskets. One of the lessons I get from that, maybe it's not a lesson that he's trying to provide, but our resources are valuable. You know, not to waste our resources. If God gives us these things, don't waste them.
But you could food, what you not eating, what you do with leftovers.
Me?
Yeah.
They're in the fridge. This guy don't waste nothing, you know.
You just pick them up.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to me, Edward, and I said this, that he's the guy that can break bread and feed 5,000 people. What we need leftovers for? I mean, he can turn a stone into bread if he so desires.
I might be wrong in my thinking, but I think when he fed the 5,000 with the loaves of bread and fish, and there were still leftovers, I look at it as they were spiritually fed. As well as being physically fed, and they were full.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it as they were spiritually fed as well.
And how so, Ron? That's a good point, because we don't see Jesus teaching a parable here or saying, let me show you what this is meaning here, that I'm doing that. And so was there any spiritual feeding at this time, or was it says that he was taking care of their needs, their sickness, he was healing them.
That alone is spiritual knowledge. I healed the sick, made the blind to see and the lame to walk again. Now I'm feeding you. This is a miracle, and it came from God himself.
He makes that correlation in John 6 between the manna in the desert that the Israelites had, and he is the bread that came out of heaven, and he is going to feed us spiritually. He makes that connection in John chapter 6, where the story is also at. He doesn't make that connection here in Matthew, and I don't think he makes it in Mark. But he does make a spiritual connection with that. Yeah. So in John chapter 6, 14, 15, after all this has happened, the crowd perceives that he's a prophet, the one that they talked about in Deuteronomy 18. He's healing people, he's feeding people. There's miraculous stuff going on here. This has to be the guy, right? This has to be the guy. And they tried to force him to become a king. And because their mindset was he's going to be a ruler like David was. And it's going to be an earthly kingdom. And we know from understanding that it's not an earthly kingdom, it's a spiritual kingdom that he was setting up. He didn't become king. He left. You know, they weren't able to force him to become king. And but that was their mindset during all this. Let's go to the feeding of the 4,000. This is in Matthew 15, verses 29 through 39. And it's also in Mark 8, 1 through 10. There is no reference in John that I'm aware of the feeding of the 4,000. But they're fairly similar stories, so that's why we're combining them today. Starting in 29 of chapter 15. Departing from there, Jesus went along by the Sea of Galilee. Having gone up on the mountain, he was sitting there. The large crowds came to him, bringing with them those who were lame, crippled, blind, mute, and many others, and they laid them down at his feet, and he healed them. So the crowd marveled as they saw the mute speaking, the crippled restored, the lame walking, the blind seeing. They glorified the God of Israel. And Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I feel compassion for the people, because they have remained with me now 3 days, and have nothing to eat. And I do not want to send them away hungry, for they might faint on the way. And the disciples said to him, Where would we get so many loaves in this desolate place to satisfy such a large crowd? And Jesus said to them, how many loaves do you have? And they said, 7, and a few small fish. And he directed the people to sit down on the ground, and he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and giving thanks, he broke them and started giving them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. And they all ate and were satisfied, and they picked up what was left over of the broken pieces, 7 large baskets full. And those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And sending away the crowds, Jesus got into the boat and came to the region of Magadan. What are the similarities between the two stories? Point out some of the similarities for me.
So the people followed him, and there were multitude of people that followed Jesus, in both cases.
Okay?
And he sat them down, and he met them.
Okay, that's a similar, right? He fed them. He had compassion on them. 3 days, it said, that they were with him. Yeah. So with compassion, he had compassion on them. He's going to feed them, right? Similar with the fact that the disciples were the ones serving. Similar to the fact that they picked up the leftovers. Similar to the fact that he was healing them before all this happened. We kind of get an indication of where Jesus is at in his ministry. When we see the words and the crowds were around him, it's hard for us to imagine what the crowd looked like. But here we get an indication that they're pretty large. Could you imagine 10,000 people trying to all talk to Jesus? I mean, it's the one person that they want to see and get healed by. On this property? Yeah, we'd have to spill over to the neighbors, I'm thinking, if we sat down on the grass to eat. Yeah. We'd have to have more than one coffee pot too, wouldn't we?
And I just trying to talk about, can you imagine that many people trying to listen? I mean, we can't preach to 30 people in this room without needing a microphone.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
You know, and the more people you have, the louder it gets. This is basics of public speaking. You know, no audience is perfectly silent. So I just think it's always, in my mind, it's just mind-boggling to think of that many people trying to hear me. No aid in volume.
Sam?
I've always kind of had a feeling that Jesus spoke to the minds and to the ears, and people heard him. Am I wrong? I have no idea. But when he had those huge crowds, again, I agree with Nate. How would they know the ears? I think he spoke into their minds, not in their ears.
Probably out word, you know. I mean, if I tell you, you tell them, they tell them, hey, tell Dan. You know? So, that's probably the word of mouth.
I'm just thinking of Gilbert somewhere in the back of the audience.
Turn the back of the girl, what do you think?
And we're close enough to the end of class that I can say this and then leave. But I'm thinking if it was 5,000 men, it would have been okay. But when you added the women and children,
Oh, my gosh.
okay, class is over.
There'll be no question.
We're done with questions and comments.
So what happened first? I mean, there's 2 incidences where he's speaking to a lot of people. That's whichever one's the second one. What do you think? Where are we gonna get this bread, you know?
Like, how did the disciples forget?
Yeah, bread, they
Well,
already got it.
he makes mention of that. I can't remember which,
It's in,
is it Mark? There's one of the recountings of it where he said, didn't you learn it?
Yeah.
Have you already forgotten?
Yeah, it's in the next chapter of Matthew 16. They're in the boat, and then he says, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. They go, oh. Well, he said, we didn't bring any bread. What are we going to do here? We ain't got no. And then he says, didn't you learn from the feeding of the 5,000? And so that's a good question. And so we can ask that question to ourselves, you know. When are we going to actually get the message from Jesus, some of the things he's teaching? Why are we so quick to forget that he says he's going to be there for us? He says, don't worry about today. Tomorrow's got enough trouble of his own, and yet we tend to do those type of things, right? So Jesus took care of their physical needs by healing them and feeding them. Is there any indication of teaching or spiritual needs? And we said yes, there is. Even though we don't see a parable or any teaching, there was some spiritual teaching there. And part of that spiritual teaching is if God's going to take care of your physical needs, if he cares for you this way, how much more is he going to care for you spiritually? So, is there any other lessons that we can gain from these two stories that we haven't covered? Julio, it's good to see you this morning, brother. Yeah, it's been a while. Thank you for your attention and your questions and your time. What do you think there, young man?